I'm Hattie Volker from Find Your True Voice, and this video is born out of a collaboration between me and Dr. Helen King from the University of the West of England. It's designed to help people who, for one reason or another, as so many people are, having to move from face-to-face, live performance or teaching or lecturing, to a situation where they're lecturing to an online audience, where at best, feedback is delayed or slow, and at worst, we get no feedback at all from the audience out there. So this video has been put together to try and help people overcome some of the challenges of performing to an invisible audience, one we really can't see and it's so much harder to connect with, but also to take advantage of some of the opportunities this situation provides for us as well. So you'll hear tips from me and suggestions from me. Also, I've got a set of suggestions from Helen, who is an expert in academic development. But we've also gone out to friends and colleagues for their ideas. And you'll be hearing a selection of tools and techniques from other people as well. And I'll be commenting on those. So you'll get a full rounded view of ideas that you can take away and use to develop your online teaching and performing. So before we get to that, just a little bit about me. So I'm a barrister who retrained as a coach and is using my knowledge of people and my experience with singers, because I've worked with singers for a number of years now, to help people feel more comfortable and confident and at ease with themselves so that they can produce their best in front of an audience, any audience, whether it's 1 or 50,000. And a lot of my work has always been online, but obviously with the current situation with coronavirus, I've now gone entirely online. And so I've converted some of my thoughts about general performance into performance online. And one of the major things I focus on in my own work is that idea of connecting with an audience. Because if we feel connected with our audience and an audience feels connected with us, then we have that space for there to be a dialogue, for there to be communication. It means the audience is linked in with us and we're linked in with the audience. As Patsy Rodenberg, who talks about the 3 circles of presence, would talk about, she would say being in second circles so that there is energy out from us to the audience and energy in from the audience to us. Now, obviously, in this world where we are entirely online, it's much harder to have that energy exchange. And so creating that environment in which communication can flow, not just in one direction, but in both directions, can be quite hard. For me, one of the main things is about where we focus our attention. And one of the starting points is, obviously, when we're working online, much of the time we see ourselves. We're up there on the Zoom screen or whatever, and we have a picture of ourselves. And it can be very easy to become obsessed with how we look, what we're doing, and overly focused on that. So that's one of the issues. The other issues with being entirely online is our audience is not where our screen is. And this will come up later in some of the tips from other people. But often you see people, and I become fascinated with watching all these people who are coming online to perform or do Zoom at conferences or Zoom reports for the television, and how it can be very tempting to talk to the screen in front of you. And actually that's not where the person is. So we can become obsessed with the screen, or we can become obsessed with ourselves. And really the idea is, how do we refocus ourselves to talk to the audience behind the little black dot. So I'm going to start looking at some of the tips that have come in from other people. So first of all, I'm going to look at tips that have come in from teachers and lecturers. So these are really people where they're involved with activities that hopefully requires audience participation and dialogue, because the more we can engage our audience as teachers and lecturers, the more they're going to learn from us. So the first tip that came in was embrace the awkwardness. Let your personality in. Now, I would say this applies as much to performers as it does to teachers and lecturers. And many of these tips that have come in for teachers also apply to performers, singers and actors, and anybody who has that stage. Because often, if we become too obsessed with the awkwardness or too obsessed with what is wrong with us, then the focus goes to us again and steps away from focusing on the communication, focusing on communicating with our audience for the audience's sake. If we allow that awkwardness just to be, chances are it will dissipate to a large extent. And if we allow our personality to come in, then we have a greater chance of engaging our audience. A lot of my work talks about how I'm not a great fan of perfection, because perfection actually is a shield. Perfection gets in the way of us having a realistic communication with our audience. And personality is often what engages our audiences the most. And that's especially important when we are trying to reach our audience through a screen. A great one, try not to talk over each other. Absolutely. And as I heard it put the other day, respect the yellow box. When you're working with Zoom, there's a yellow box that goes around the person speaking. And somebody gave me this great tip, which was that when she trains, she says, respect the yellow box. So when two people talk at once, one will get the yellow box. And if the person who doesn't have the yellow box then gives way to the person who does have the yellow box, it's an easy way of going, this is the order in which we're going to take it. And this is also about realizing we have time. We don't have to rush through things. And there is space to respect each other's conversations and not to interrupt others. Encourage interaction. Now, as I said when we talked about other activity that requires audience participation, interaction, I think, is even more important online, because not only are we facing the distractions that might be at our end, but other people and the people we are talking to and exchanging with will have distractions their end. The greatest of all is the fact that they're on their computer too. And how many times do we flit off and look at something else online when maybe we're in a meeting? And if we're encouraging their interaction, we're stopping them getting bored, we're stopping them drift off, we're stopping them move somewhere else. So if you can think about how you can encourage interaction, not only is that good for maintaining their energy and engagement, but it is also a good way of getting some of that feedback that we lack when we've moved from a live environment to an online environment. I like this one. Accept silence that isn't necessarily a bad thing. People need time to type questions or put up their hand to talk. And we can feel that it's important to fill the space. But actually, it's also important to give people time to process what you've been saying, to gather their own thoughts, as well as time to type questions, to encourage that engagement. If we give them that space, then it's easier for them to engage and it's easier for them to think. Don't stress yourself overthinking it. Yes, I'm a great believer in not overthinking things. If you pre-record and stumble over your words, don't worry. Even if you're live and you stumble over your words, especially if you're live and you stumble over your words, don't worry about it too much. It gives that authenticity. As I say, perfection can be a barrier to connection. If we have slight stumbles here and there, or if you make a mistake and have to go back, it makes it more real. It makes you more engaging. Talk as if you're looking someone in the eye. It's okay to be natural and explain informally as you go along. Not only is it okay, I think it's incredibly important, and it's what people engage with. If you come as rigid and talking through a set of written notes, it's much harder for your audience to engage with that. And it's much easier for them to engage when you are natural and you're explaining it in a way that they can understand and they can engage with. Don't forget to smile. Even though I'm not on camera now, I'm smiling. And smiling not only helps people engage with you, it helps you relax, it puts you in a better mood. And it also engages the mirror neurons of your audience to smile too. We all know that when smiles are contagious and when we smile at other people, they will 9 times out of 10 smile back. It's contagious, it lifts the mood, and it releases the lovely oxytocin into our bodies, and if our audiences smile, into their bodies too. It helps us relax. And I love this one. There's always the teach the cat dog toy option. Cats in particular as an option are quite realistic in terms of student engagement. I love this. Now, obviously, if you're on camera, it's important that you are engaging, as I will come to next, with the black dot, because the black dot is where your audience is. And if you're looking at a cat or a dog or a toy, then you won't be engaging with the black dot. This is more about practice. And perhaps if you are not looking at the camera, like I'm not being filmed right now talking about what I'm doing. So it is useful to imagine someone else there. And that comes up more in the next set of tips. Oh, before we get there, breathe. I like this one, and I like the simplicity of it. It's that idea that some people will tell you how to breathe, some people will tell you to do 10 breaths, some people will give you all sorts of different tips around breathing. But essentially, sometimes all we need to help us is to stop and remember that breathing is really useful. It's not only useful for getting to the end of our sentences, it's also useful for centering ourselves and for getting the pace to a nice level. Now we move on to the tips from performers or singers, or those bits of teaching when you're presenting to your students. So anywhere where you are performing for an audience. And not to forget that sometimes as singers and performers, we engage with our audience in exchanges as well, depending on the type of performance we're doing. So, but these are the bits where we are presenting to our audience. The camera has to be the person you're performing to. And this is what I was just alluding to now. That is that idea of imagining who is beyond that little black dot, imagining there's someone there. And here is one of those advantages of being online. Who is behind that little black dot is entirely up to your imagination. Even if you know who is behind the little black dot, you can imagine the sort of day they've had. You can imagine the sort of mood they've come in. And this is one of the things that I find helps performers in a live scenario as well. We forget sometimes that our audience are as human as we are, and we see them as these judgmental masses. One of the advantages of being online is we can create our audience, but it's also good to remember that our audience is human too. They have had good days or bad days. They have had arguments. They have come to listen and learn. They have come to listen and enjoy. They are there to enrich their lives. Smile at the camera, imagine the audience is there. We've had different versions of this in the last section and coming across to this section. Smiling is such a good thing, and I've covered that in detail already. And the audience is just there. They're just beyond the camera. Inhabit the song or tune. Oh gosh, this speaks to me so much. I'm a great believer in not only knowing your piece intellectually, not only knowing your subject matter intellectually, but engaging with it on an emotional level. And that might sound completely nuts, but if you take a song and you understand your emotional engagement with each line, with each word, with each note, and you can engage with it on an emotional level, you're like the lecturer, the teacher, who is really passionate about their subject. You love your subject, and then you can inhabit, you can live in that space. And that is so much the best way to communicate not only a song or a tune, but also a lecture or a lesson. Because when you inhabit it, you, again, back to the mirror neurons, you exude that passion to your audience. It comes out of you, and that's what engages them. And as I say, particularly in these hard times where it's so hard to engage through a screen and there are so many distractions for your audience the other end, having that, living your message, living your music, can make a real difference. Talk to the camera as if it was your best friend. So this goes back to the first one, that idea of remembering the audience behind the camera is human, and 999 times out of 1,000, they are there to enhance their lives. They are there to get something positive from you, whether it's enjoying a performance or enjoying a lesson. And if we remember that, and remember that actually they are generally on our side, it can change the way we feel and therefore change our performance. And for those finding it really hard in the idea of doing something online, these are a number of steps that someone suggested, which I think are great steps. First of all, practice it alone first. Before I did this video, I had a little bit of a chat through what I was doing, how I felt about it. I practiced. Do a technical rehearsal with just one or two friends as audience. This can be really useful, not only to loosen you up and get you used to the subject matter and how you want to present it and get some feedback, but also on a technical level, working out the pros and cons of how things work and what you can use and what you can't use. Consider having an assistant to run the technical side whilst you can concentrate on the artistic side. Absolutely, if you can do that, then you don't have to worry. For some people, that's even having someone there to answer the technical messages that might come through or complaints, while you concentrate on the questions about the subject matter or engaging your audience. Watch the video afterwards and see what you would wish to improve next time. And I love the wording of this one, because often we might think, we'll watch it back to see how badly or well we did. And that's judgment. Watch the video afterwards to see what you want to improve, to see what you liked, what you want to do more of, what you want to do less of. And this is a great way of encouraging you to focus on the bits that really you could stretch your comfort and your skill zone on, rather than always concentrating on the bits that you enjoy and do really well. It's a sort of deliberate practice process where you're focusing to develop the bits you really, that will really enhance your performance. And number 5, absolutely, enjoy it. Again, if you enjoy it, your audience will enjoy it. You will relax, you will sink into inhabiting the song, the tune, or the lesson. And that whole sense of relaxation will come across. Create an atmosphere in your head and around you as much as you can. Yes, so as much as I was saying earlier, there can be, as much as there can be distractions for your audience, there can be distractions for you. And one of the advantages of online is you get to create your environment. Today I'm sitting in the brightest, sunniest room in my house with my piano behind me in a yellow chair, in a place that feels really comfortable for me. And that helps me create my environment. And think about the acoustics and think about distractions. If there are other people around, the noises, what will distract you and what will distract your audience. And back to that fundamental thing, communication is the key. setting it up so that you are opening the channels for communication. You are opening up so that you feel comfortable communicating with your audience. And if there's an opportunity for your audience to communicate with you, then that channel is open and you respond, and there's time and there's space for you to do so. So next we move on to tips from Dr. Helen King from the University of Western England. So give the audience the attention you would in a face-to-face situation. We've just talked about removing distractions and create an environment where you can be as calm and professional and able to give a level of attention that really helps engage your audience. Because the more attention you can give your audience, the more they will feel like engaging with you. Try not to look at notes too often. You can, again, another advantage is people can't see to the side of the camera, so you can put things up and sticky notes at eye level. And I would say, I mean, I'm not a great believer in hefty amounts of notes because we become reliant on them. I'm a great believer in bullet points, which means that it's easier for us to inhabit the message, because if we know our material well enough to do it without notes, to trust ourselves to do it, then it will come much more naturally and with more enthusiasm and more passion. If we feel like we're going to miss something all the time, or we worry that we're going to miss something because we've got all these notes, that will distract and detract from that. Keep eye contact with the camera, not with the screen. Yes, exactly. I've mentioned this a number of times. That little black dot is where the audience is. They're not on the screen. They are behind that dot. And sometimes I feel like there's something sci-fi about it, that actually I have a conduit to them through that little black dot, and imagining them the other side of that little black dot. Thinking about your audience being there beyond the screen, and you can picture them in your normal work environment. You can picture them in whatever environment works for you. Another advantage of being online. And like me, Helen uses her hands a lot and gesticulates a lot when she talks. And it's very natural. Be true to yourself. Exactly. So using your hands, be natural. You may feel tempted to try something new, and don't prohibit yourself from doing that. Don't stop yourself from doing that. But don't feel you have to. Being yourself is the best way of engaging your audience. Speak clearly and at a reasonable pace as you would face to face, and breathe. So those are the tips and advice that have come from all our friends and acquaintances and from Helen and me. And one of the most important things, I think, to remember is, and anybody who knows my work knows that, for me, this is a key to being a great performer, is be kind to yourself. Don't aim for perfection, not only because it's an unattainable goal and aim, but also because there's enough that is false about working online. There is enough that takes away from the humanity, from the connection that we naturally have in a face-to-face situation, that distracts from the energy exchange that goes on purely by way of being immersed in a situation when we're face-to-face. Being online takes away from that. So not aiming for perfection and being your usual, normal human self is a way of getting that authenticity back into the situation. It's a way of allowing people to engage with you on a human level, because we're not robots. And if perfection were what we were after, then someone could design a robot to do it. What we engage with is the humanity of the people the other side of the screen. And it works the other way. Remember the humanity of the people the other side of that little black dot. I hope this video has been of use to you. Thank you for listening, and I wish you luck with your online performing and presenting.